Hello, and welcome to the fourth lesson in the 8th Fetter. And today we're going to talk about that sense of an I or a me that you can have. So you have done all the fetters and you have seen through self in every single way, but you still have that very unexplicable sense of someone here. That's what I want to address today. Now, before we start, there are two things that I would like to address because they might actually be why you have this sense of, a stick in the wheel in your process. And the first thing is that nothing is linear. Yeah, I know that you might have worked with the feathers in a different model, or you might have worked with them and assumed that it was the first feather, second feather, and third feather, or maybe you skipped those and then went straight to fourth and fifth and have worked yourself through it like it's a ladder. But when you come to the higher fives, it starts to get really muddy because all the crude types of identification have fallen. You no longer identify with thought. You no longer identify with all the things you want or you don't want. You have worked with the sense of a subject here and an object out there. And then you start to get confused when you arrive at the 8th feather because you still have that sense of something here. And that shouldn't happen if things are linear. But nothing in life is linear. And the way that Todd and I work with the feathers is that we more see it as a wheel. We call it the wheel of identification. The way our approach to it is more an everyday exploration of what type of identification is happening in this moment. Which means that we're not so stuck on you have been through the first feather, so you cannot go back. You cannot go back. We more see it like if something arises, instead of having resistance to what is arising, then acknowledge that there's something that has slipped by your radar. There's something that you have not seen before or had an insight about before. Or maybe all the insights that you have had up until this point have now led you to something else revealing itself and something else that needs your attention and the work that needs to be done. And if you have had any type of rigid mind frame or framework when you have worked with the feathers, then it's very normal that at this point you will have reached a certain level of spiritually arrogance, that you have that sense, but I have worked with that I can't go back because I have been told that if I go back, that means that it didn't fall in the first place. Well, that would assume that anything in life is linear. And for anything in life to be linear, time needs to be a thing. Now, we dissolved time in the 7th feather. So if you have any sense of time being a factor, that I started to work with this at that point and now I'm at this point, then you have this delusional idea of a time frame that is linear. It's not how it works. We do not know what time actually is. We do not know how it actually works. We have no idea. And just because you experience that you wake up in the morning and you get out of bed and then it's afternoon and then it's evening and you go back to bed, just because you experience it like that does not mean that that is actually how it is. You have probably in your life multiple times experienced that you had an insight about something. It could be about a person that you realize that they're not really good for me. This relationship is not really good for me. But then something happens and it feels like you're back to that insight never ever happened. And at a later point you realize, oh, this person isn't really good for me. This is not a good situation for me. And then it might hit differently. Now, if anything linear would happen, it would be that you were here in life, you realized this, there was a consequence, you understood it, and you implemented it into your life. Nothing is like that. Nothing is like that. And to think that the fetters is the only exception to the rule. Nothing is linear in life at all. Everything is circular, or at least in Fibonacci sequences, right? Nothing is linear. So to believe that the fetters is the only exception to that rule, it's just nonsense. So if you have had insights to these things that we talk about, if you have realized that there is no self anywhere, then you also know that this sense of an I that is observing here can't be real. If with the linear model that you have really understood that sense wouldn't be there. What we are saying is that nothing is linear. We do not know. We need to really be wise about our ignorance. We do not know how all these things happen. We do not know what happens. We do not yet have the equipment to see and measure in the brain what actually happens, to notice with the hormonal releases and the nervous system's effects on different things that we perceive. We do not have the equipment to find out what is happening in an organism that is awake and in an organism that is not awake. We do not know what that actually means. So having any idea or any notion of anything being linear, I would recommend you to go to the seventh fetter and work with that delusion of time, work with that delusion of linearity, and then just be kind towards yourself. If you have insights today that are in a fetter that you already have worked with, it does not mean that there's any failing on your part, and it does not mean that you didn't understand it the first time. You did. Now you just see it on a different level. Now you're just in a position where you can work with this in more depth, where you really can go into it, where there might be some hooks that are not attached anymore. So you can go in and work with this on a deeper level. There's no failing on anyone's part to do that. On the contrary, that is actually a huge sign of maturity. And you know that from, children's development, that children that are not emotionally mature, they get very rigid when things are not going their way. They get very throw a tantrum, and you also know that from adults that are not emotionally mature, that they throw a tantrum and they can't believe that this is it, and they're very, very set in their ways. That is just a sign of emotional immaturity. So you being emotionally mature and saying, oh, I thought that the fourth and the fifth fetter actually fell, but I feel now that when you're sitting and saying this to me right now, I have this feeling of slight anger that is arising. I have this feeling of annoyance. I mean, what the fuck do you know? When those emotions arise, then greet them. It's amazing. Congratulations. You're now, working deeper with it. Isn't that why we're here? Isn't that what you want? So it would be very, very helpful for you if you completely drop all notions of linearity in life, because it sets you free and it sets other people free to be who they are. It's also, if you're in a relationship with a friend and they have promised that they would never do this thing that they do, gamble all their money away and you have to pay the rent or whatever, and now they gamble that all the money away. Instead of having that idea of a linearity, you can set yourself free and set them free to them being in life the way that they are. Allow them to be who they are, so you can allow you to be who you are. So there's no hooks or expectations into things being in a certain way, because nothing is linear. Nothing is linear. There's no notion of time at all. And if you have that feeling of time, go to the seventh fetter and work with it there. So in order to work with the fetters in a way that is actually productive in your life and that is, is actually useful in your everyday life. It is about staying open to whatever is arising. And if you're not emotionally attached to things being in a certain way, that can arise. And you can look at it, from a fifth floor view with no judgment, with no assumptions, with no opinions, with no anything, and just notice, oh wow, that needs some love and compassion. There's a little hint of me right now that feels a resistance, or that feels like an identification, or wow, I thought that I had free will, that I could actually decide what I wanted to do this afternoon. Or wow, really, really look at it and work with the feathers as a wheel, that you notice what is arising as an identification, and you then just address it when it is arising. You're not in any way arrogant about how things are. You need to be in that wisdom of ignorance, that you do not know. Obviously, that also goes for us. We do not know what works at all. The only thing we are promoting is loving kindness towards what is present right now, instead of having a resistance to what is present right now. Because it is a very efficient way to release suffering and discomfort in life. It is to be present with whatever is arising and having a full acceptance of whatever is arising. The other thing I would like to address is the permanence. Now, if you have worked with the feathers, you might have this idea that when a shift has happened, that shift is forever. That is not possible. There is nothing permanent in life at all. You cannot point to a single thing that is permanent. So obviously a shift is not permanent either. Why would a shift in the feathers be the only thing that is excluded from the real of from the reality of non-permanence, of impermanence? Everything is impermanent. There's nothing that stays the same. Change is happening. Time is not happening, but change is happening. And it's like that with a shift. So it's a bit tapping into the other one that I talked about just before, that if a shift has happened, that is something that arose in a snapshot of a moment. If you then start to identify with that shift and say this shift is now permanent, you are deluding yourself. You're back in the first fetter, because first of all, you are saying that things are permanent, which nothing is. You're saying that there is an I here that has experienced a shift which will stay the way that it is. And you are saying that time is a thing, that what is happening right now will maintain forever and ever and ever without any change whatsoever. That is identification with identification on top, and a little sprinkle of identification. None of that is actually possible. Again, we do not know what a shift actually means. We do not have the machines or the tools to see what a shift actually is. It is a subjective experience. And that subjective experience can only be experienced and talked about if it is put into a perspective of time. So you have a snapshot here, let's say before the shift. Then you have a snapshot here where the shift happened. And then you have a snapshot here after, where it's alive with the shift that is now present. To have any experience of that, you need an identification. You need an experiencer that is experiencing what is happening. And these snapshots are being weaved together by the mind and creating into a continuous experience. That is seventh fetter. Time does not exist. What you just did, where you took one now and glued it together to another now, that means that you now have a past where the shift happened. The past doesn't exist. That is just a thought. It's a mental formation that is happening in the now, right now. And whatever you assumed happened in the past, it's just a repetitive thought about an assumption of what happened. So let's say a shift happened, an experience happened where you suddenly, the sense of self dropped in a moment. That happened in a snapshot, right? That experience that you had there cannot be talked about. Because the moment you add words and you start to explain, which is a verbal indicator, go to the lessons about verbal indicators if explaining is your thing. When you then start to explain what happened, you are no longer in the experience. You are in the explanation of the experience, which is created by the mind with words that you're putting on it. Every single word you add to an experience is being minimized. The experience is being minimized by words because the words cannot describe a feeling, and an insight cannot be described with words. Then it's the words we're talking about. We're no longer talking about the experience. So when you had a shift that happened in a snapshot. It needs to stay in that snapshot. You cannot carry it with you and say that this, what I'm carrying with me now, is the experience of that shift. It's not. It's a thought about the experience of the shift. It's not the shift anymore. We're only talking about the thoughts about it. So you need to let it be. You need to stop doing all those mental formations where you're weaving things together into a long experience, and then you end up over here saying, I lost it. It's not there anymore. Of course it's not. It happened in a snapshot here. And this moment is no longer here. You are in another moment now. We don't know. I can't point it out linearly because that is not a thing. You are in a different moment now. And this moment that you are in right now, you have a delusion that tells you that your experience right now is not like it was. But if you look back at how joy felt when you were 4 or 14 or 40, the feeling of joy has changed, right? The experience of joy has changed. It's different things that gives you joy, and the way that it feels in the body is different from when you are 4, 14 or 40. The experience in the body is different, and it's because it's not the same body. There is not a single one here that is experiencing joy the same way as you did when you were 4 and 14, because you were not there when you were 4 and 14. You're not here now. So that mind fart that Tata said, I can't say that. That mind delusion that you call that linear, that sense of something that is continuous in any way. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. A shift cannot be permanent. Nothing is permanent. A shift can't be permanent. The only thing you have available is your direct experience. It is what is arising right now. And what is arising right now needs to be set free from any previous experience. Because if you put it into a comparison, so if you have that feeling that, oh, I experienced a shift in June and now I don't have it anymore. What you're doing is you're taking this perfect slice of a snapshot and comparing it to something else. First of all, that is mental formations, right? You are comparing two things that can never ever be done because you were a different person in June when the shift happened than you are right now. Like I just said, that you were not there, you're not here. I don't need to go into that again. So that comparison that you do is mental formations. That's one thing. The other thing is that you're putting an I in the middle that experienced something in June that is experiencing something right now. That is minimizing. First of all, it's delusional. There's no I anywhere. But you're also minimizing the experience. What we are calling you to do and inviting you to do is to drop all that. Go to the 7 Fetter video about unpinning. Drop all that. The only thing that is available right now is what is arising in this moment, and now, and now, and now. It is nothing but individual snapshots. And there cannot be anything that is bleeding in to another experience. So the experience you have in this moment right now, of being in your body right now, and the experience you have of this moment and being here right now, those two cannot be compared. Because it's not linear. It's not linear, and it's not permanent. There is nothing in this biology that is the same, can experience the same things as I did 3 minutes ago. You need to unpin. You need to allow yourself to have that full freedom of full horizontal view, that way, behind you, up and down, and then unpin, drop that vantage point where you're looking from. Dissolve that. That is the expansion. Todd, he has in his poetry book, Todd is writing a poetry book. It is finished and it's absolutely fucking amazing. It's so good. He's writing, and I'm really, really going to butcher this because he's the poet of the family, where he says that it's like being a balloon without a skin. So the air in the balloon without a skin is the same as what is outside and around the balloon without a skin. That is that sense of complete dissolving of everything. So to get to that point, I just want to walk through where you can have hang-ups and point you to which fetter it might be useful for you to work with if you have hang-ups. So this is more like a checklist for you to check it. Now the first fetter is about the very, very crude identification with your body, with your name, with your gender, with your education, with your role in the family, with how you view things, where everything is super, super self-referential, that you for some reason have more value than anything else outside of that you that you have. So you can easily kill animals and eat them, squash a fruit fly, doesn't really matter, lie and cheat and deceive people if it, for their own good, white lies and all that. All that can completely, it's completely fine. That can completely happen. That is identification in the first fetter. When you truly realize that that is delusional, that there is no one, and you really with increase look into that there is no starting point here. Because the way that we are in the world, and now I'm moving into the second fetter, the way that we are in the world is with a starting point. The way that we view the world is with a starting point. And if you haven't worked with the second and the first fetter, I can warmly recommend you to go and do that right now. Go to the second and third fetter and work with it, because it is paramount for the 8th fetter to drop, that you really have looked at your toxic starting point, what we call the toxic starting point. And that is where you have an underlying belief of you being vulnerable, you being in danger. It could be that you have fear, anger, guilt, and shame as a starting point, where you believe that there is something inherent shameful about you. That there's something that no matter what you do, you feel guilty because you're never ever succeeding in the way that you've been taught that you should. Or it can be that you have a protection mechanism of anger that is just jumping out, and you go, well, it's just a reaction, it's completely fine. I'm throwing a shoe, and I mean, it's fine, I'm not angry afterwards, and then it's completely done. But that all those, or fear, I just want to point out for fear as well, is when you have that underlying vigilance in you, that you need to be careful with what you say, with what you do, with the way that you are in the world, you need to be careful. You need to check twice. You need to ensure that everything is safe. Those are toxic starting points. And those are being dissolved in the second fetter. If you haven't worked with the second fetter, go back and do it. The 8 cannot drop until you have looked at all the traumas that you have stored in your body. Because this is one of the very, very important things to look at that I'm circling back to in a moment. That every single experience you have had is stored in your body. A therapist can manipulate muscles, tendons, ligaments, or fascias, and emotion will arise. It's not because that emotion is real. It's just because that has been stored away in muscles and tissues, in tendons, ligaments, and fascias, and it's just there. I will talk more about that in a moment. But if you have any identification with a set starting point, then it's the second fetter that you need to look at, because there is no starting point. Like I just talked about with the seventh fetter, where we unpin, where you have the center, you have all the 6 directions, and then you dissolve that center. Then it's just open space, which means there's no starting point. There's no starting point. There's not any preconceived notion about anything. You go into everything completely open. Every conversation, when you wake up in the morning, everything is completely open. There's nothing you have to do. There's nothing you have to do. Can't find another word for that. In this moment. There's just this moment right now. And that unpinning needs to happen, and it can only happen if there's not a starting point, and that is in the second fetter. In the third fetter, which is equally important, because the third fetter is paired with the ninth. And the third fetter is where we have that idea of a doer, that I can exercise to lose weight. I can eat healthy to live longer. I can speak nice to people and they will be nice to me. Anything where there's that idea of a doer. And by doing something, something else will happen. That is in the third fetter. Obviously, you don't know that, because that would mean that things are linear and things are, happening like domino tiles, which is not. We're human beings, and things just is complete chaos. You can be super nice to people and they turn around and snap at you. It's not conditioned like that. It's not that there are too many factors that you need to have in that equation for things to happen like that. So you run every single day because you think that if you go for a run, you will lose weight, but you do it in a way that activates your nervous system so you get an adrenal response, and cortisol is releasing insulin, which is a storage hormone, which means you store fat. So by running, you actually get fatter. There's so many factors. And we are delusional when we believe that we have any inkling on what the bleep is going on. We don't. We're back to the wisdom of ignorance, the 10th fetter. We do not know. But if you still believe that you can do things for a purpose, and there is a doer, and you do have free will, and you can decide what you want to do, go to the third fetter, because the ninth fetter is paired with it. It's the third fetter is the lower 5s are very, very crude identifications, and the higher 5s are, the same, they're paired, but it's more subtle. So the subtle identification with that doer and I can and all that is in the ninth fetter, when we're in the flow fetter. Well, we're going to talk more about that in the ninth fetter, obviously. And then there's the fourth and the fifth, and that is where there is I want to backtrack a bit, go back to that 8th fetter sense of a me being here, and that me can want something. Not in the 4th and the 5th fetter, that is very, very clear that, I want what is happening right now. I do not want, I want this instead of. as if that is possible. That is what we work with in the fourth and the fifth fetter, that is not on the table. This is not an option. That is this snapshot right now with everything that is present right now, and things are as they are right now. There's not a choice anywhere where you can choose for this to be different, because it can't be. It's not. So if that is the issue that you have and you need to work with again on a different level, on a more insightful level, then go to the fourth and the fifth and work with it again. The full curriculum is there. Just knock yourself out. So if you have that, you know that there's not anyone that can say anything to you, and that having an effect on you. That is not possible. I can recommend you also, if you feel that you're repeating yourself here, that you go and watch the 2 lessons about the bubble of reality. And the bubble of reality is that everything you perceive as happening out there is not. It's happening in here. It can only ever happen in here. The biology is here, the nervous system is here, the hormone releases are here. It can ever only happen here. So if you say something and I get aggravated, it's not you that aggravated me, it's me that aggravated me, because I'm looking into a mirror. What I project onto you is something that I know from my past, in me, know from my past. I'm projecting someone or something onto you that is not really you. And even if you are acting like the biggest douche in the history of douches, I don't think I can say that. Oh God. If you are acting like, not okay in the history of not okayness, then still, I cannot react to that. I cannot react to that. I only see that if I know that douchiness side in me. Otherwise, it won't work. That's why sarcasm doesn't work on all people, because some people simply do not pick up on it. There's nothing that resonates with that at all. Irony, the same thing, doesn't resonate at all. So there's no perception of what is actually said. And it's also why if you encounter a passive-aggressive bully that is super passive-aggressive about everything and go like, so you want me to pick you up at 2? And they go like, no, don't think of me, I will walk. You will just go like, okay, see you there. So that feeling that you can have of anything happening in them out there is not happening. It's only happening here. And that takes us to the 6th fetter of the subject and the object. Everything you perceive is out there. It's not. It's only in here. Toddy has such a great exercise where he asks you to think of the alphabet A, B, C, D, E. So if you think that, and now you say it out loud, do you see it's happening in the same space? It's happening in the same space, because there is not anything out there at all. Whatever you look at out there is not what you actually think it is. Whatever you're looking at is a recognition of something in here that you look at. And that's what we work with in the 6th fetter, where you feel how your vision is changing, because you suddenly do no longer have any need. I'm sitting and looking at a plant right here, a beautiful CC plant. You no longer have a need for this to be as I assume it to be. So when I enter the room and I look at the beautiful plant, I can set it free to look like a tree or a cat or anything. And that's what we play with in the 6th fetter, where you sit and you play with your vision, and the same with the sound. When you hear sound, that you play with, the first layer of sound is that you hear, for example, right now I can hear a car, that the mind immediately put that into being a car. But that can be dissolved into just being vibration, and all you hear is vibration. But that is in the 6th fetter. The seventh fetter is the delusion about time, and where you have from that eighth fetter feeling that there is a little sense, a kernel of an eye. The same with the sixth fetter, obviously. There is a little kernel of an eye here that is seeing and hearing and smelling and tasting and touching and having all those experiences. If that little kernel of an eye is there in the sixth fetter still, when you have worked with the sixth fetter, this is the lesson to come to. And the same with the seventh fetter, that there can be that you can do the unpinning, that you can do that Google Map pin, and you look at all the different directions, and then you unpin. And in a very split moment, you can have that dissolving, and there is nothing. There's nothing that is connected to anything. It's just open space. But then within a split second, it's kind of like it's morphing back, and then you have that little kernel of an eye. And that is leading me to what I actually wanted to talk about. That was a very, very long lead, and that leads me to what I actually want to talk about. And it is about your cerebellum. In your brain, your brain starts to develop the moment you are conceived. And the cerebellum is the part that is about the motor function. So it's about the way that you move in the world, about how you can pick up something as a baby, and then start to, first when you see, as a baby, your hands are moving like that, you do not know that this is a part of me. But then you start to notice that, this is actually me. You start to recognize yourself in the mirror, see that is actually me. And that is where the whole creation of a separate self is happening. And that's also why it's so important that we have a very strong sense of a me, of an I, before we start to dissolve it. That we have had people that are coming to the fetter work and they're starting to work with it, and they don't have that sense of self, but they have never had it. For some reason, they have been in a super dysfunctional family and they have never experienced a healthy sense of a self. Or it can be that when you were raised, that you very quickly found out that you would need to either read the room so you wouldn't be punished in any way. Then it's easier to be out there than in here. Then you don't develop a sense of self and you don't have any healthy boundaries. Or it could be that you just felt that when I am of service to others, I feel that I am actually worth anything. If I'm not of service, I don't feel any type of worth. So what I'm trying to say is that those different developmental ages that we have from when we're in the second trimester and up until we're about 16 years old, the cerebellum is being developed. And the cerebellum is the part that is giving you muscular tension in a different area, in different areas in the body, that is pre-verbal. And that creates a difference between the I, that is the ego, that is the mental understanding that you can understand intellectually that the I is not there. But the me sense of that you're here, it's tied in with physical sensations in the body. So that sense of a me is based on survival. It's based on action that are driven by instinct. It's driven by reflex systems, automatic skills, and genetic knowledge. And all of those are pre-verbal, which means that you cannot put a word to what it is that is happening. And this is also why we are very, very adamant to do body work. That is very important for you to do different exercises that are activating different muscle groups in different ways, that are activating the nerves in different ways, the ligaments, the tendons, and the fascia in different ways, simply to allow all of those stored ideas of the world, of starting points, of underlying beliefs, of survival mechanisms, of conclusions that you have made in a very, very immature state, a part of your development, that all that is stored in your body. And you can do exercises, and this is part of what we're going to do next year. We're going to create an add-on series to the awakening curriculum that is called Move into Awakening, where we are only working with the higher fetters, but we're doing different exercises and addressing the underlying identification that normally is being activated on that very, very subtle me level. And just allowing all that to be experienced and expressed without a story. Because this is the most crucial part of this sense of a me that is here. It is that you're missing the point when you're creating a story about it. The story is only there as a metaphor. So if you were not met with kindness and compassion, if you had an experience as a 4-year-old that you put the blue beads into the yellow bead box and somebody shamed you for that, that feeling of shame, it's so deep and it's pre-verbal. And so you cannot understand with your adult brain that putting the beads in the wrong box can give this big a feeling of shame that you are carrying with you through your middle school, high school, university. You have that unexplicable feeling of shame. That cannot be about beads. It cannot be about blue beads. It simply cannot. But that is because your brain has developed, and now the feeling of shame, the magnitude of that feeling is the same. That has not changed. But the perspective on it has, because you're mature now. And that's why we cannot use the stories for anything. If you sit and tell a story about putting the beads in the wrong box, that does not evoke that feeling of shame. So you need to get out of the way. Get out of the way. Unpin. Allow the body to move. Allow the body to express what it needs to express. Let all of that out, and just do all of that without a story, without trying to understand what it is that is going on, because you do not have that ability. We do not have that ability to understand what was going on in us, in the biology at a previous point of our lives, because, we weren't there. So next year we're going to address that. But I would like to address it a little bit now. If you close your eyes and you feel into your body, and you feel into that hook into a me that is somehow in the center of everything that is happening around you. I would like for you to, first of all, unhook every story that you think is arising right now. So unhook every story, and every time a new story is starting to emerge or starting to create itself, it's just a cloud on the sky. You do not need to do anything about that. Every story, just let it dissolve, let it dissolve, let it dissolve, and just stay with this sensory experience that is happening in your body right now. Now I would like for you to zoom in and slow down. Because when you're slowing down, you're allowing for this snapshot of a moment to be here. And in this snapshot of a moment, what you deem to be a me that is here, a continuous permanent me that is here, it's not there. There's a sensory experience in the body. Now that snapshot is ended, another snapshot is here. There's not a me. There's a sensory experience in the body. If you do not weave those two snapshots together, there's not a continuous sensation of a me anywhere. There are sensory experiences in the body, and that is what I would like for you to zoom further into. So stop the weaving of the snapshots. Just have this moment right now. What do you feel? And I know you can't even look into it because the moment is gone the moment you start to look into it. But in that sensory experience that you have in this snapshot, you might have, let's say, a tension in the chest. In this snapshot you have right now, there's a tension in the chest. And in this snapshot right now, there's a tension in the chest. Now, those snapshots with a tension in the chest does not point to a me being in your chest, or a vantage point or self-referential little dot that is coming from that tension in the chest. It's just tension in the chest, and that we can work with. It can also be that you have this idea that you are behind your eyes, that when you look to the right and you look to the left with your eyes closed, that you have that feeling of, yeah, I'm here. But I want you to slow down and zoom in and look to the right. Have a snapshot. That snapshot is nothing but tensions in the eyes. Now look to the left. The snapshot is nothing but tension in the eyes. And that tension in the eyes is a muscular contraction, and that we can look at. Let me open your eyes again. So what I'm saying is that if you have that feeling of a me being here, you're too quick. You need to slow down and zoom in. That feeling of a me that you have, it is a muscular contraction. Like Alan Watts said, that the sense of self is a constant muscular contraction. That's it. There's nothing else but that. And where you feel that muscular contraction that might be there all the time, that somebody says something and you feel a muscular contraction, you can zoom into that. So when you're in the situation that somebody says something and you feel that muscular contraction, do you see it's just a muscular contraction? There's not a need to defend a muscular contraction. All you can do is just be with that. Can you breathe? Can you be in a body with a muscular contraction? Can you breathe into that? It is just a muscular contraction. I think that was it. I can warmly recommend you to go back and work with all the feathers. Work with even the ones you have done before, because you will hear it differently. And when you go through the feathers, notice that muscular contraction. Where is that? And then move it. Move it. See if you can release that muscular contraction. Does it move somewhere else? And then connect on Discord. We have an amazing community in there. I can't put a link in the description because it keeps expiring. But if you write in the comment section, I can put in a link that you can click on. And then start doing the movement. We have, which I'm gonna share with you next year, 2025. I obviously don't know which year you're watching this video, but in 2025 we're starting with the new series called Move Into Awakening, which is different exercises. We have a daily exercise regime of 12 different exercises that are tapping into the different developmental ages that you have, and with them comes every feather is tied in to a developmental age. Every single thing you experience where you identify is tied in with a specific developmental age, and you can do different exercises to activate those muscle, ligaments, tendons and fascia in that area and release the tension that is there, so you can be in a body where the muscular tension is not giving you an indication of an I in a certain experience that you have. But that's for 2025. I think that was it. If there's anything that you have questions about, then again, go to Discord. In the thread that we have that is called Friday Q&A, you can ask questions. And then when we have the Friday Q&A, we answer them. You can also come to the Tuesday inquiry group that we have, where it's live, where you can sit and ask us directly. We can have a conversation. We can do inquiry with you about the topic that you would like to work with. It's just to say that you're not alone in this. Yeah. I hope this was helpful. Thank you.